Your card gets declined at the grocery store. You're standing there with a cart full of essentials, nothing extravagant. Just chicken, rice, vegetables, maybe a simple box of cereal. The cashier pauses. The line behind you goes quiet. You feel every pair of eyes, even the ones pretending not to look. You reach for another card. This one works. You walk out to your car carrying more than groceries. You're carrying a question. Am I failing? Here's the truth most people never hear. You're not failing, you're living the reality of what average has become. And right now, average is financially fragile. So let's strip away the illusions and look at what a normal life actually costs in 2026. Not luxury, not excess, just the baseline life society labels as standard. Because once you see the numbers clearly, everything starts to make sense. The median household income in the United States sits around $84,000. On paper, that sounds solid, middle class, stable, respectable. But that number doesn't tell the full story. Before that money even touches your life, a significant portion disappears. Taxes, deductions, retirement contributions, suddenly, that $84,000 shrinks to about $65,000. Now you're working with roughly $5,400 a month. That's your reality. That's your battlefield. Let's break it down. Housing alone can take around $2,100 monthly, and in many cities, that doesn't buy comfort. It buys compromise, limited space, delayed maintenance, constant trade-offs. You're left with just over $3,000. Transportation steps in next. A car payment, insurance, fuel, maintenance. It easily adds up to around $1,300 a month. The machine that gets you to work becomes one of your biggest financial weights. Now you're down to about $2,000. Food? Even with discipline, moderation, and no luxury spending, you're looking at around $700 a month. Utilities, internet, and phone bills, another $350. Health insurance, even with employer support, around $200. Student loans? For millions, that's another $350. And just like that, you're left with roughly $400. That's your margin, your safety net, your breathing room. But life doesn't ask for permission before it happens. A medical bill, a car repair, a school expense, a single unexpected moment, and that margin disappears. This isn't mismanagement, this is math. You haven't accounted for clothing, emergencies, savings, or even the basic human need to enjoy life once in a while. You haven't planned for children, which can multiply costs instantly. And yet, society looks at this setup and calls it normal. Here's the deeper reality: the cost of living has surged, but income hasn't kept pace. Housing, education, healthcare, these have risen dramatically over the years, while wages have moved far more slowly. The equation doesn't balance anymore. But instead of fixing the equation, the system shifts the blame onto you. It tells you to work harder, spend less, hustle more. And that leads to the next trap. Most people believe the solution is simple: earn more. More income, more security, right? Not exactly. Because as income rises, so do expectations. At $40,000, you're expected to live modestly. At $80,000, you're expected to upgrade. At $130,000, you're expected to look successful. Bigger house, better neighborhood, reliable cars, vacations, appearances. The pressure doesn't come from one source, it comes from everywhere. From coworkers, neighbors, social circles, all chasing the same definition of success. And so, income grows, but so does the cost of maintaining that identity. The struggle doesn't disappear, it just evolves. Now imagine a household earning $130,000 a year. By every standard, they've made it. They're above average, they've done what they were told. But once taxes are deducted, they're left with around $7,000 a month. A modest home in a decent area? Over $3,500 monthly when you include mortgage, taxes, insurance. 2 cars, because both partners work? Around $1,400 combined. Groceries for a family? $900. Healthcare? $500. Childcare? $800. Student loans? $600. Before they even reach the finish line, they're already out of money. And that's before clothing, school expenses, repairs, or anything unexpected. They're not living freely. They're balancing on a financial edge, just at a higher level. This is the reality most people never talk about. Financial security isn't determined by how much you earn. It's determined by the gap between what you earn and what your life costs. And today, that gap is shrinking for millions of people. So if you've ever felt like you're running harder but getting nowhere, if you've ever wondered why progress feels so fragile, it's not a personal failure. It's the structure of the system you're operating in. And once you truly understand that, something powerful happens. You stop blaming yourself, and you start thinking differently. Once you lock yourself into that lifestyle, you're no longer flexible, you're fixed. You can't downsize without disrupting everything you've built. You can't take a lower paying path to pursue something meaningful because the bills don't pause. And you definitely can't step away to figure out what you truly want. Because your life now demands constant financial input just to stay standing. This is the real price of average. It's not just financial pressure, it's the loss of freedom. You wake up, work, pay, repeat. Not because you love it, but because you have to. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't accidental. The system is structured this way. It keeps people earning just enough to stay hopeful, but never enough to break free. It encourages borrowing to maintain the image of success, while quietly limiting your ability to step back, rethink, or challenge the path. Over time, something even more dangerous happens. You start believing this is normal. That stress is just part of adulthood. That struggling quietly is simply how life works. So you don't question it. You don't resist it. You just keep going, hoping that somehow, next year will be different. But next year doesn't change anything, because the numbers don't change. So the real question becomes, what do you do now? Because awareness without action changes nothing. The first shift is this: average is not a goal. It's a template, a product, something packaged and presented as success, but rarely experienced that way in reality. The advice many people grew up hearing: get a stable job, buy a house, build a family, and everything will fall into place, was built for a different time. A different economy, a different set of rules. Trying to follow that same path today without questioning it can quietly lead you into a financial dead end. So instead of following assumptions, start with clarity. Sit down and look at your real numbers. Not what a bank says you can afford. Not what society says you should afford. Your actual take-home income. Your real expenses. List everything: housing, transportation, insurance, loans, utilities. Then look at what remains. That remainder isn't just money. It's your life. It's what you have left for food, growth, peace of mind, and your future. If that space is too small, the pressure you feel isn't random, it's predictable. Strong financial footing isn't about chasing bigger income alone. It's about structure. When most of your income is locked into fixed expenses, you lose flexibility. And without flexibility, even a small disruption feels like a crisis. That's why one of the most powerful moves you can make is identifying what's taking the biggest share of your income. For many, it's housing or vehicles. These are often framed as symbols of progress, but if they consume too much, they quietly become anchors. Now imagine this: reducing just one major expense, lower housing costs, fewer car payments, even a small shift, repeated consistently over time, compounds into something much bigger: options, breathing room, and eventually, freedom. But this path comes with a trade-off. You may not look as successful as others. You may drive something older. You may live more simply. And in a world driven by appearances, that can feel uncomfortable. But here's what rarely gets shown: the debt behind the lifestyle. The stress behind the image, the pressure behind the posts. Everyone chooses their version of hard. It's hard to live below your means while others seem to upgrade. It's also hard to stay stuck for decades, constantly catching up. It's hard to say no today. It's also hard to deal with regret later. The direction you choose determines where you end up. And at the center of it all is one powerful concept: the gap. The gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is more than numbers. It's leverage. It's protection. It's possibility. Without it, you're reacting to life. With it, you're shaping it. Even a small gap, built consistently, begins to change everything. It reduces dependence. It creates options. It gives you the ability to respond instead of panic. But building that gap requires a decision: to stop measuring success by what's visible and start measuring it by what's sustainable. Most people won't make that shift. Not because they can't, but because it forces them to rethink years of habits, expectations, and choices. It requires standing apart. But the ones who do? They're not just earning, they're building. Not just surviving, they're stabilizing. They understand something powerful. Wealth isn't just about income. It's about control. And control begins the moment you stop playing a game designed to keep you running. No one is coming to change your situation for you. Not institutions, not employers, not systems that benefit from your participation. So the decision becomes yours. Continue chasing a version of success that keeps moving further away. Or step back, look at the numbers honestly, and build a life that actually works. A life where you can breathe. A life where you're not one surprise away from stress. A life where your choices are guided by intention, not pressure. Because in the end, it's not about looking successful. It's about being stable. And that stability? That's where real freedom begins.